And good evening. My name is Joe Hobin, and welcome to Focal Point, a new show here on Plattsburgh State Television, where each week we will have a conversation on one issue that is plaguing our country. Today, for our first episode, we will be taking a deep dive into the Electoral College and the voting process, and most importantly, the flaws and benefits with it. For those who don't know how the Electoral College is determined, it is by how many House representatives and state representatives that state has, total up to a total of 270 to win for that election. By default, each state always starts off with 2 for both the state senators, and the number of House representatives is determined by the population of that state. So on the one side of the spectrum, there's California with 55 representatives, and on the far side of the spectrum, there are multiple, with the low only having 3 representatives. These include Alaska, Delaware, District of Columbia, Montana, North Dakota, Vermont, and Wyoming finishing up with the least amount of population, which is 584,910 people. This is compared to the massive amount of people living in California with 39.5 million people. This is where we see our first problem with a flawed system, as the numbers are skewed very drastically. And if you take the whole population of both states, you will find that one electoral college vote in California needs more than 700,000 people to equate to it, and Wyoming only needs 195,000 approximately. Now, big numbers are scary, so I'll simplify it. A vote in Wyoming, and the population were to vote, is about 3.6 times more powerful than a voice in California. Although this may not seem like it in the larger bucket of things, the numbers do not lie. A question that should be asked is why in a day with the internet that allows us to share the same information, individual citizens only have less than 30% the voice of someone else. Combine this with the fact that dating back to 1996, there has only been 30 states out of the 300 who have actually switched from the previous election. This means that on most elections, the visible results show that only 10% of the people switch their votes per each election. And out of those, the 30 states that changed from blue to red or vice versa, only 20 states actually changed. So if you live in one of the 30 states who didn't change, you are pretty much locked into whatever color that state is known for. And out of the 20 states that actually changed, 6 of the 20 were responsible for half of the changes, meaning 14 states only changed their opinion once, dating back to 1996. The last time New York was red was back in 1984, but this really isn't even a surprise, because that year there was only one state that didn't vote for Reagan, and that was Minnesota. Last time Texas was blue, look back to 1776. And notice how I haven't mentioned the third-party candidates and where they fall in this whole spectrum? The reason is the last time a third-party candidate won a state was back in 1968. Just about a half century ago, when the Big Mac was first sold and Martin Luther King was assassinated. To me, the Electoral College is a flawed system and is our focal point of the day. When we come back from commercial, we'll be sending it out to our on-the-street interviewer who is investigating around the campus to find out how much of the town of Plattsburgh knows on the topic, and later sitting down with an average Joe on his thoughts and having a conversation and maybe finding some possible solutions. So stay tuned, because we've got a lot more to cover. Thank you.
Me te tengo que decir, te quiero que me tienes harta, el peso que dice su cuerito, me llaman a las 4 de la mañana, me toman mensaje, mira, oye, pero cada rato, oye, te tengo que decir, este muchacho que me tiene a mi harta. Ni siquiera tengo su number save, me llama cada rato, me está mandando mensajes que yo te hacía.
Ay, pero qué dramática.
¿Dramática cómo? Dramática que tu madrina, chico, te estoy diciendo el mismo problema mía, cada rato tú me quieres decir tu problema.
Estás viendo PSTV, Canal Charter 194, Canal Campus 10.1.
Tune into PSTV, Campus Channel 10.1 and Charter Cable 194.
Hi, my name is Eli Moore here with Focal Point, and today we're going to be interviewing some people outside the ACC regarding their opinions about the Electoral College. Did you vote in this past year's election?
I did, yes.
No, I did not.
Yes, I did vote in this year's election.
I did vote in the past 2016 election. That is correct.
I did not.
Oh, I didn't.
Do you think the Electoral College is a good voting system?
I do. I think it balances out the power of the people in the state. If we didn't have the electoral colleges, the states with the larger population would essentially control who is in Washington, regardless of what the needs of other states are. Just the needs of a bigger state like California is definitely different than a state like where I'm from would be like Vermont.
That's a question I don't even understand. I'm not very politically active, but I'm gonna say yes.
In the past, yes, but as we saw with the most recent presidential election, I don't think it's very efficient anymore.
I think in some degree it helps balance the things of legislation and probably picking a president, but there's times that it does fall.
I think it has its moments, but I don't think it's very effective anymore.
It's iffy because sometimes I feel like it can have too much power, maybe.
Do you know how many delegates the state of New York has?
I wouldn't say 23 representatives to each state, so I believe that's how many there is altogether.
No, I don't.
No.
Oh. I don't know. I'm gonna guess and say 22.
No.
Unfortunately, I do not.
Do you think it is right that in a state where most counties voted red, the city has the most power?
No, I don't believe that's right. I believe that again, since the city has a bigger population, they can basically have power over the rest of New York. I feel like if majority of the counties voted red, then the delegates should have went to whoever was the candidate at the time, or to the red.
I think cities have bigger populations, so that really plays a factor in roles of picking a person in the city or state as like a president or an electoral person.
The place in the state is the city, so I think that makes sense.
I mean, I'd say so, because there's a lot of people living in the city. I think that gives a general, basis for everything.
Probably not. No.
I do not, because it completely overrides the votes of everybody else within the state.
Do you feel that the third party is a viable voting option?
No. Never.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
I think it could be, but at the rate that the party system is going in this country, I don't think it would actually happen, at least not for a while.
It should be, but just the way how no one really takes third parties seriously. The media barely covers them, which is what you need is for a good campaign is you need at least some coverage, and the third party candidates do not get as much coverage as say a Clinton or a Trump would. So I just think they're not taken seriously. So
In some degree, no. I feel like it doesn't hold liability. I think everybody has their faults with it.
Provide some new ideas to laws in the area.
I wish they were taken more seriously, because I think we need a third party option more as we go along. Diversified parties, I think, would be better instead of two main parties that are always bowed out for control in Washington.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Well, that's about all the time we have right here. We're going to send it back to the studio.
I want to welcome you to yet another version of After Hours here on PSTV.
And welcome to another installment of Talk Nerdy to Me.
You look excited.
Yeah. I'm freezing.
I'm Lauren Weiss.
And I'm Kyle Bryant. Let's take a look at today's top stories.
2 minutes of the finest in news that you need to know about.
And now it's time for a PSTV News special report.
Scoring scores! With 2 seconds left!
Plattsburgh Hoop Troop is a recreational club where you can either come to learn how to hoop, you can come for hoop fitness, or you can just come to hang out with your friends if you already know how to hula hoop. It was something I started as a sophomore because I love to hula hoop. Our open flow sessions take place from Friday 2 to 3 and Tuesdays 6:30 to 8. Watch PSTV on channel 10.1 or Charter 194.
Do the things and stuff. There's shows on it that you can watch.
Some pretty good stuff, man.
Welcome back to Focal Point inside the studio. For our last segment today, we will be talking to a sophomore here at SUNY Plattsburgh, an average Joe if you will. So please welcome him on, Mr. Nicholas Arsenikos. How are you today, Nick?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Now, Nick, as you know, today we're talking about the Electoral College. And I have a few questions to ask you. We've been seeing a notable trend going on in our country where for the last 6 or so years, not a lot of states have really changed, only having a max at 10 or 8 in some of the years, some as minimal as 2 or 3. Do you feel like this is going to be the ongoing trend continuing further?
You mean changing states of changing political ideas?
Exactly.
I can definitely see it in the future, depending on how this 2020's election is going to go. I can definitely see that. Even this year's election, actually, with the Senate, the midterm election, that might actually change a couple of states as well for either right or left. I doubt any third-party candidates are actually going to be getting any kind of steam or any kind of power nowadays, but maybe 1 or 2 states might flip-flop a little bit more to the right, a little bit more to the left.
Now, you mentioned third-party there. Now, the last time in our country we actually had a third-party candidate win was in 1968 with George Wallace in one of the Nixon elections. I myself feel that the third-party candidates don't get as much traction as they should in the political elections. How do you feel about that?
They really don't. They really don't at all. I remember with the 2016 election with Donald Trump, there was a big controversy with the Libertarian and the Green parties with the primaries that were going around that they weren't even allowed to speak in some of them because they didn't gain a certain percentage of voters or support from the country itself, which is a little bit messed up in my opinion. It's not proper. Everyone's supposed to be allowed to speak their mind and see if they have a good idea that the population agrees with. And to have them have a limit to if they need a certain amount of people or percentage of the vote to actually go in to actually debate, it's wrong, especially against 2 big powerhouses like this, like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's horrid. If you look at most countries out there, they usually have 4 or 5 parties out there already debating whenever the new election's coming up. Here, there's only ever really 2.
Yeah, and it's quite a shame when you see that has been the trend throughout most history. And the percentage that they do need to get into the actual debates is 15%, which to me is a little bit too much. Now, when it comes to age and getting people to vote, do you feel that if we were to have mandatory elections, that people would like that to get more of the voting in?
No, with this generation mandatory, it doesn't work. It would not work. It will not work. It's not a good idea. It just sounds almost like a dictatorship kind of idea. It just wouldn't work in today's day and age. Just because of the fact that people would most likely rebel against that and it would not be well accepted. I don't even think the Senate would even approve that, or the House of Representatives. No one would ever approve that law. If it was something to maybe drive people to go out and vote more, maybe some kind of like gift, or not gift, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Incentive.
Incentive, there we go. Incentive to try and get them to vote, that might work. If it's a tiny law like that, maybe a bonus on the tax reforms, or maybe something minimal like maybe some kind of lowest percentage on another form of tax, it would maybe work out like that. But another thing is, it's not just the fact that people are just lazy, that they don't want to go and vote for the government. A lot of people just don't trust the government or even other parties. They don't trust the Democrats. They don't trust the Republicans. No one trusts anyone anymore. And it's just a little bit depressing if you ask me.
Now, I'm always the mindset of always pushing forward with the younger generation, because the younger generation have new ideas. They're growing up with modern technology. Do you feel that we should have an age limit on voting to maybe stop some of the trends of certain states like New York always being blue and Texas always being red?
Well, in regards to New York being blue, it's not really an age kind of thing. I met a lot of people in the city that are hardcore Democrats, especially even on Long Island, where people on Long Island are primarily Republican. A lot of them are, especially from the more richer communities. There still are a lot of Democrats there. It's not just the older generations, it's the younger generations with that. But in regards to the idea of limiting the voting age, it might work, but most likely it won't, because the people that it would have to get through to get past, the Senate, the House of Representatives, they're all over, well, majority are over 60 or 70. There's a couple that are below that, but it wouldn't really work out. They would not pass that at all. And then if you look onto someone who's maybe 80 or something, in comparison to someone who's 50, if the person who's 80 has a better mental capacity than a person who's 50, then that's another thing. What you're talking about is changing of ideas, right? Changing of cultures.
Yes.
I mean, I get that, but it's also been throughout human history that the wise men, the oldest among us, are the ones who lead us. They know what has happened in this world, but also with the younger generations, they have fresher ideas. So it's a very complicated question with that. It might work, but most likely it won't.
Now, my other question I want to ask you, and this goes more lines of gerrymandering when it comes to how things are broken up. You mentioned a good fact about how you know people who on Long Island, where you're from, that most of them are Republicans. When you look at a lot of the electoral elections, you will notice that most Democratic votes come from the major cities. In New York last election, I believe maybe all, or except for one or two, including Clinton County, were all red except for New York City. Do you feel that there should be certain states broken up like that if there is just one major pocket that has all the power?
I don't think it should just be one state that holds all the power. I think the state should be broken up depending on the votes. If a Republican Party gains certain increments for that, then obviously they're more Republican people with that. With delegates going to the Electoral College, and so on and so forth. But the whole gerrymandering thing, it's just a messed up process, if you ask me. I look at just maps of states, and it looks like some form of modern art. Just some painter took a paintbrush and just splashed it onto the canvas. It doesn't look right. What it should be is it should be just evenly done across the country, longitude, latitude lines, but smaller in percentages, just straight down the middle.
Interesting.
It doesn't favor one person or another, one group over another. It's completely random where it goes. It could split a city apart entirely, so who knows what would happen from it, but it would be completely fair.
So you're thinking that we should keep with the Electoral College for it to be fair and stuff, and not just go with the whole one-person vote equals their one-person vote should be just no matter where you are in the country.
That also brings up another problem in regards to the lower population states, where one vote is equal, sometimes double, triple, quadruple the amount of another person in another state, such as New York. And that brings up another problem with that. But I understand the whole idea of making one person's vote count as one person, but the amount of people that live in the United States, you know the exact number?
I know it's around 350 million.
I believe 346, I believe somewhere around that. But in any case, that's a lot of counting to do for that, especially for a national-wide thing. That's kind of why the Founding Fathers did the whole Electoral College, to minimize that, and also for another reason, but that's not exactly important right now. The Electoral College was there to make sure it would help the people choose the next leader of the country. And it's an idea that the Founding Fathers left, so it should be left in, especially because it's not broken entirely. The Electoral College do choices because they benefit the country, or they feel at least they benefit the country. And most of the candidates, well, not candidates, but people that work for the Electoral College are choosing the ideas best for us, I feel.
Nick, well, thank you for coming onto the show today. It's been a pleasure having you.
Likewise.
Well, looks like we are just about out of time. I want to thank Nick one more time for joining us today. And we will be back in 2 weeks, where we will take on another deep dive with Do Video Games Make People Violent? My name is Joe Hobin. That has been Focal Point. Get home safe, North Country.